everybody. Thank you, Lewis, one of our panel. Let me bring the other members of the panel up. Start with Melanie. Melanie is from South Yorkshire. I grew up in North Yorkshire, but I don't hold it against her. Tobin from the North East. Both of these areas, lots of local authorities, different political complexions, lots of sort of different challenges. Maybe we'll hear a bit about that. And then Andy from the mighty Hitachi Empire itself. I think a Rayleigh guy.
I am, yes.
A Rayleigh guy. Okay, right.
You introduce them by where they come from, and
you come from the Empire of Hitachi. We know this, right? Right. So look, ignore my stupid introductions. Why don't you introduce yourself? So, Lewis, you've actually just done the thing. Have you anything to add to that by way of introduction to the discussion?
No, I've taken up plenty of time, and I'm going to let my esteemed colleagues introduce
Right,
themselves.
thank you. So, yes, I'm representing South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, and we have taken Supertram back into public control in South Yorkshire. We are working towards bus franchising, and we will have buses running under public control from September 27. And the intention is to integrate the ticketing, the timetabling, and to build an integrated transport network. And we are starting to do that. We've got a walking, wheeling, cycling strategy. We are trying to build that in. So we're looking at end-to-end, door-to-door journeys, and how do we make that as simple as possible for our passengers and customers.
Hi, I'm Tobin Hughes. I'm the Director of Transport at the North East Combined Authority. And I thought I'd just give you an opener because I've been trying to think around this subject of integrated transport and energy and how to try to articulate it well. And I was thinking about a link between somebody like perhaps a care worker on the outskirts of one of our cities in the North East, say Sunderland, and a wind turbine out in the North Sea. And what could the link possibly be? And the integrated transport system that Mel's area, my area, Wales, and in fact all of the parts of the UK are trying to construct is the starting point. We're all trying to get better buses. You've heard about that on the Mayor's panel this morning, and you've heard about it already from Lewis. We'll talk some more, I'm sure. But as part of the better buses system, we need greater electrification. Electric buses are a far superior product to ride on, let alone to actually pay for the fueling and to contribute to climate change targets. But they need power. And as I'm sure we'll get into, because Paul's promised to probe, the power grid is struggling already with the demands that are placed upon it. There's lots of investment plans nationally, but at the moment, there's insufficient. So the wind turbine, in my local context, is, it turns out that the Crown Estates own some of the seabed off the northeastern coasts, and they have in them the potential to generate half the power needed by the UK on any given day. We need to get people to work to manufacture the wind turbines. We need more electric buses. We need the power grid network to be sufficient to carry things. We need to be able to plug buses into that power grid. In our local context, we actually need to raise the existing power grid cables that cross the River Tyne, already carrying the national infrastructure, so that wind turbines can pass beneath. And that's linked to some work that Hitachi are doing with the North East Combined Authority and the Port of Tyne, looking at the future of green ports. So there's loads of connectivity, loads of integration to talk about as we go. So thank you very much. I look forward to the debate.
Thank you. And Andy.
Yeah, good morning. So my name is Andy Bell. I head up the Hitachi signalling and telecoms business in the UK. And as part of that wider Hitachi, you've already touched on some of the work that we do with various authorities across energy, across ticketing. But probably one of my useful references is that for the last 15 years, I've been working with Transport for London, with Manchester here, looking at their connected networks. And again, how do we optimize things like the B network up here? How do we control that? How do we support the Mayor's vision up here? But similarly, again, in London, I think Alex talked about the challenges of power consumption again. The changing landscape, what people expect from transport today is very different from what it was 10 years ago. So proud to partner with those authorities and with all of these authorities actually, and kind of look at how we ultimately serve the needs of our passengers and our communities.
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Right, we've got about half an hour for a discussion, which isn't very long. Dean's going to give me the hook later on because there's a fast changeover in this thing, so we can't overrun. So we've got to cover the whole world, the universe, and everything in 30 minutes. Look, systems thinking. I'm a big fan of systems thinking. It's the obvious and sensible thing to do. We'll get maybe on to the retail politics of system thinking later on, but let's just start with system thinking. It's a great thing to do, isn't it? Why aren't we just doing it? What stops us today? I mean, I'm very aware, you mentioned London and Manchester, and if you're sitting in Newcastle, you're sitting in Sheffield, you're sitting in Cardiff, you're thinking, yeah. But it's all right for those for those people in London, because they've got a combined authority, they've got the finance, they've got the structure, right? I've got real problems in my area. I've got real problems just to pull together an integrated ticketing app, never mind worrying about the bleeding energy system on top of that. And oh, by the way, if we're going to talk about that, what about water? Because if I get a flooding event, you know, it takes out my energy system, and then, by the way, that takes out my road network. And systems thinking, I love this stuff, right? It's the obvious way to go. But there are reasons we're not doing it, aren't there? What are they, Lewis?
Well, I think Wales is in a uniquely positive position, partly because we are quite far down the road of devolution. So we have a Welsh government that's given us a really clear remit around systems thinking. And there's a couple of things that I'll just touch on briefly. One being a piece of legislation some of you may be familiar with, some of you may not be familiar with, which is called the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which puts in law requirements for all public bodies in Wales to integrate, to work together, to think for the future, and to make sure that they can prove to government and our commissioners that we are thinking in a systems way. Now, that's not always perfect, it doesn't always work, but the intention is there, and it signals an intent which obligates multiple organisations within Wales to work in that way. So I think that's really helpful. I think the other thing is just to say that we have more levers available to us now in Wales that we previously didn't have. And I think I mentioned bus franchising. So we will have control and a control of mind over a network that was previously fragmented. And I think, you know, we're in a similar place as other colleagues on the panel in terms of that bus franchising journey, but already having responsibility for the rail side of things means we can bring that together probably faster than others. So I think Wales is a uniquely positive opportunity, but none of it is easy. And we need fantastic support from our supply chain to really help us to innovate and overcome some of those challenges.
But Lewis, you're making it worse now, right? Because they were already aggrieved about London and Manchester. You'll now explain the devolved nations have got it easy too, right?
I agree.
Melanie, why aren't you just systems thinking? Come on.
Well, in order to think about the whole network together holistically, we need to have control over that network. And the mayors have got the powers to do that, but they need to enact that, and it's actually quite complicated. So we started by taking Supertram back into public control. The system is over 30 years old, and there's a significant lack of investment over that time. So we've got obsolete vehicles, tracks, signals, depot, you name it, the whole lot needs significant investment. So we've got a major renewals programme. We want to extend the life of the existing fleet. We want to digitise it. We want new signals. We want real-time information. And for a customer to be stood on a platform and get some information about when trams are coming, and then to find that if it doesn't turn up, it just drops off the board, ghost trams. We need real-time, and we haven't got that. We're not going to get that until later next year, working with our partner Hitachi, but it's really significant for the customer. If you are journey planning, you need real-time information on the trams. Now, we can do real-time planning on buses, but we need to be able to integrate that with tram. And that obsolescence is a factor for us. Also, bus franchising, we are going to have a wholly new fleet for tranche 1 of our bus franchising. But we cannot get all EV vehicles because of the limiting factor of the electricity supply. So we will have to buy some diesel buses because we cannot charge up the whole fleet for tranche 1 immediately on day 1. And that is a real shame. Now, if we are working on, we've bought depots, we're working on the electrification plans, but we are planning that over the next 3 or 4 years until we are fully up and running by our tranche 3, which will be 2029. So that is a real limiting factor for us in terms of how quickly we can move on this.
Okay, all right, so very different situations, and we'll come on to the North East just for a second. I'm just going to dwell on the idea of ghost trams. Anyone who regrets the fact the Harry Potter cycle has finished, there's a whole new franchise here, I think, ghost trams. Right, so in the North East, different again. And each devolved administrations, various of the regions, different points in the revolution and different, obviously, the reason they're created is to deal with the different circumstances. What are you finding in the North East?
Yeah, well, I'm going to start by answering the question that you posed, my fellow panellists, because we've been, as a country, spectacularly bad at planning. That is why we can't get whole systems integration. But, and perhaps I would say this, being an employee of a devolved authority, but since the advent of devolution, whether that is the Greater London Act, whether it's what's happening in Wales and Scotland, or whether it's now the mayoral strategic authorities across England, we're now getting much more ability to get the tools for planning within our grasp. So I think I've been around for longer than I care to recall, but previous governments, and it's not really a political thing here, but have said, right, we'll set the strategy at the national level, and then we'll convene all of our partners, local government and private sector partners and others around the table, including privatised utilities, and they'll all come together and make it happen. And that has not happened. So we're now trying something different, and Lewis has described how he's some way down the line. South Yorkshire have got 8 years on us in terms of having a mayor, and we're catching up fast. But it's, yes, we've got a local transport plan that we're proud of that describes how we intend to integrate different forms of transport, get a green and integrated transport system that works for everyone is its tagline. But that is only part of our suite of plans. It's all circulating around the local growth plan. That's how we're going to grow our economy and make sure that everybody can participate in it. And that requires us to engage with, in this context, with the energy sector to make sure that we're collectively with partners who've got the actual delivery levers sitting around the same table and coming up with the same plans.
Well, can I pick up on that? Because you mentioned the North Sea wind power farms that are just visible, literally, I think, from where you sit. You've got Blythe, which is setting out to be a centre of the offshore. So you're just starting out on the integrated transport thing. If we talk about a wider systems domain and we try and bring the energy system there, have you frankly got the capacity to do systems thinking at that level, bringing in that, so notwithstanding the fact that you've got the resources locally?
I think it's early days is the genuinely honest answer, but we will have to, because all of these three things rely on each other. Alex said it at the start, you know, the energy systems are quite often kind of overlooked in terms of some of the more visibly tangible deliverable items of a shiny new bus or a new railway line or whatever it might be. But if you haven't got the energy systems right, then you're going to fall flat on your face when it comes to delivering passenger innovations as well as cleaner, more efficient technology. But in order, or perhaps as a product of doing that, certainly in the Northeast context, and we're not unique in this, we will stimulate our economy. We will get investment from external partners, and we're working closely with Hitachi on a number of projects where they're investing in our region, but that will attract wider investment as well, and will generate jobs that are well paid and self-sustaining. So it's all an ecosystem that really will self-support. So we do have the capacity for now. We're building greater capacity. Much more will be needed. But I think what we need to do is, having established this point where there is a greater degree of whole systems planning, but at a regional level, we need to maintain and sustain that in the long term, not just bin it all off again in 10 years and start again.
Okay, so Andy, I'm hearing a lot of really great things about Hitachi here, so I feel duty bound to give you a hard time. So Melanie's got all sorts of problems around grid capacity for her bus fleet. And we won't, because I don't think it'll be useful for this session, but we could talk about the constraints on the grid and what needs to be done over there in that part of the system. But why isn't the supply chain helping Melanie? Surely there are other ways to configure this supply. Surely there are other bits of technology that could help this. How is the supply chain going to react to this change in posture which we're hearing across the authorities to a system thinking, and are you going to stop being Hitachi Rail and become Hitachi Systems instead of living in your silo?
So I guess my reflection on your original question, and I'll come back to the Hitachi branding in a minute.
I'm just teasing.
I know. I think we all understand much more now that transport infrastructure has a number of elements, and there's a big interplay. We've talked about the ticketing challenge. We've talked about the energy challenge. You talk about optimizing operations. You talk about maintenance. You talk about multimodal systems. So the complexity that you end up with, across a network, it can be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've got a great opportunity now. You talked about devolution and mayors, and I genuinely believe there is a great opportunity to shape the future, to have a vision, to have a clear direction where you want to go. And I think that's really important, and probably what's been lacking a little bit. But equally, we've all been there. You can do great strategy papers, you can do great analysis, and you can disappear in a world.
And then it goes to procurement.
And the real challenge, or the other half of that challenge, is how do we make a difference today?
Mm-hmm.
How do we help with the challenges of getting a modern ticketing system that is commensurate with what you want? How do you help with the challenges of energy, as you highlight? How do you help with the challenges of an aging network that needs immediate action to improve it? And I think that's the challenge as a supply chain, as wider organisations. You need that vision, you need that system thinking, you need to understand all the levers and what you're trying to achieve, but you also need to be making a difference today and starting from where we are. It's great having a vision and something shiny, but you only get there by incremental steps. And I think that's where we as technology organisations, working in partnership with local authorities, with other organisations, look to move forward step by step. Rather than just sitting there in a perfect world with a clean sheet of paper and saying, there you go, there's a system, see you in 20 years. I think you have to go on that journey together.
Okay, all right. Let's change the boot to the other foot. So system thinking is great, right? But silos exist for a reason. And I always think that systems thinking is a mental toolkit which we can use, but so is project thinking. So is silo thinking. And the reason why Hitachi organises the way it does is because the client has organised the way it does. The reason the client organises the way it does is a number of reasons, right? The way the money comes in dollars, but also the world's too complicated to deal with as a whole. You have to break it down to be able to get deliverable things. So what might we lose? What might we de-optimize in this journey? I mean, I'm really liking this conversation. But, as responsible leaders, we've got to think about the downsides as well. So, and is it all upside? Is it all wonderful? Or might there be things that are not so good?
I think the danger is, as I highlighted, really, the decision making and having clarity of decision making. Yes, I kind of fully support the concept of looking broadly, understanding the levers. How do you get the balance right between energy management, passenger experience, reliability, maintenance schedules, all of that complexity. As I said, if you're not careful, I think the danger can be that you disappear into a lot of analysis.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders, that's the challenge of how do you How do you understand the different levers? How do you balance, all of those factors, investment priorities as well, but also, have clear, actionable plans that really make a difference to the passengers, to the public.
Sorry, Tobin, are you confident then that you'll meet that challenge? This is not gonna get into some, lovely floaty vision statement. You're gonna actually still be able to deliver in this new world.
I don't do lovely floaty vision
Do you
statements,
not?
but
No, you should. They're lovely.
you're quite right that the challenge is, in order to get a properly joined up systems plan, you will be slower. And it requires collaboration, partnership working between different organisations that are trying to achieve different things, or even large organisations, different parts of it. So there's an element of compromise, there's an element of extra time, and we work for mayors and you work for a Welsh government with ministers in it who are not going to be selling to the general public, vote for me because I'm dead good at systems thinking.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that because I think that's a really important point.
But without going too far into it now, then that is what will keep us right, because we need to deliver tangible benefits for the public here and now. And even if we would like to disappear into a smoke-filled room for 6 months with our mates and produce a floaty vision statement, the people we work for will not let that happen. So we need to remain grounded so that we can focus on the outputs.
So, Melanie, how many local authorities in your patch?
So there's 4 local authorities.
So you've got a mayoralty, 4 local authorities. So that's 5 interactions. So what that's 5 factorial potential bilateral conversations. So how on earth do we make progress when we've got to consult all of these different people?
I mean, that's a relatively small number, and we all work very well together.
No, I mean, I think Tobin's got it worse, right? But still, it's
I don't think that is so much of the issue. I think that traditionally each mode has been delivered in its own silo, and that's the problem. And if you take buses, for example, all the commercial operators that are currently running in South Yorkshire, there's over 100 ticketing products. How confusing is that for the passenger and for the customer? But we can't sell bus tickets because they're commercial, and then they've got a collective umbrella with Travelmaster. We can't sell them. Now, we can sell tram tickets because now tram is in public control. We've developed a retail app in-house. 40% of our sales are coming through that app, but we cannot sell bus tickets. So we can't do that until the 5th of September 27, when it's tranche 1 of franchising and we start to take control. But you can see the power of that if we can simplify that for the passenger, and we can connect the timetable in so that you can have buses feeding trams and making sure that the timetables link up. So you can start to see that by bringing the modes together, you really get benefit for the customer.
Okay. And Lewis, my ignorance of Wales is almost entirely complete. But I still find it difficult to believe that everybody is of the same mind. How do you bring people together in a systems world and get stuff done?
I think it's a really big challenge. I think you've got to have a really deliberate intent and put real energy and effort into it and do it in a very structured way. And I think that's been our experience. So not to try and sort of compete over complexities, but we've got 21 local authorities, we've got 4 regional transport consortia, UK government, Welsh government. So by the nature of our work, it's all about engaging, collaborating, bringing in trade union partners, bringing in supply chain. And I think that's created a culture where every decision we make, the expectation is we make it collaboratively. Now that can slow you down, but also makes you make better decisions. It has been our experience, and I think you have to plan for that. You have to bake it into your program. You have to make time to make sure you've done that effectively, and that's certainly been our experience. I think the other thing I would say is vision is critical, and if you have a clear, articulated vision that is motivating, is exciting, people will naturally want to work with you. And I think if you don't have a clearly articulated vision, all of the engagement in the world will be meaningless. So I think that's really, really important. Having the ability to stand up in a room with people and sell something that they all want to get behind is a key component to that. And then the engagement just happens far easier.
All right, very good. Now look, I want to come back to something that Tobin opened up. I work in the transport industry, and transport industry people love transport. They love transport, and they love talking about transport. And they use words like modal, don't we? Which no human has ever used. Right? No one going to the shop saying, I wonder which mode I use today. It's never happened. And by the way, I used to be in the IT industry. Right? God, IT industry, people love their stuff. Systems thinking people, they love their stuff too. And they use phrases like systems thinking. And the energy system, honestly, no better. So we've got a whole set of stuff, there's a whole lot of language we've been using here, which is for us in this hall. We love talking about the stuff. We know what we mean. We're experts. And yet we're engaging with the world, which is after what this is all for, a set of people who don't know, don't care, and may be actively repelled by this stuff. Now, I know that in some places here, actually, go back to the title, systems thinking for decarbonisation, forget the exact word, right? But, you know, we've got a climate crisis going on. It's the single biggest existential threat of our lifetimes and our children's. And we've got a set of democratically elected representatives who are positioning efforts to combat climate change as being a waste of money and a distraction from issues that they believe are more important. And who are we to say that that's inappropriate in a democracy? So how are we going to tell a story? How are we going to communicate this stuff? How are we going to get out of this room where we're happy with words like modal and systems thinking, right, into the real world and make this sort of stuff tangible? How can I translate decarbonisation into a set of benefits for the people on the electric bus? And Melanie, you were beginning to illustrate some ways in which we could do it. But I really want to focus on this thing, because if we can't tell this story, then this discussion will stay in this room and we might as well not have bothered. So, Lewis, can I throw that one over to you first?
Yes, by all means. So, the thing that I guess we have tried to do is to be always user-focused and make sure that anything we develop is done with, and I think everyone often says this, but it's difficult to do it in reality, is having the customer at the heart. And I think if you have genuinely understood the communities or the individual users and the behaviours you're trying to influence, because ultimately I think everything we deliver is about human beings, and if we forget the human factors that influence the decisions that people make, we'll often build the wrong thing or deliver the wrong service. So if you keep that at the very core of your thinking, and you let that lead you in terms of whatever solutions you come up with, rather than starting with the solutions, which I think historically is where our industry has often made mistakes. I think that will often help with coming up with the right outcome, but being really focused around users, really understanding the various behavioural influences that determine the people that you're trying to help. And if you get that bit right, I think it becomes much easier. Mm.
Melanie, you were beginning to describe some of the ways in which we could do secret decarbonisation, right? Don't worry about the fact that the engine's electric. It's just a nicer bus. Do we think that we can do... I mean, you've got a particular set of elected members with a particular set of perspectives. How is working with that in reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. The politicians locally are very supportive of what we're trying to do with the transport network. It is the customer at the heart of what we do, and we're trying to cut through that complexity. I mean, we talked about the different ticketing options. It needs to be really easy for people to use public transport. It needs to be reliable, affordable, safe, clean, and we're trying to give people choices. Transport gives people opportunities to link them to jobs, training, housing, social activities, family, friends, whatever the reason. It affects people's everyday life, and we can't lose sight of that. You know, that is what we're trying to do, make it so easy. And there are some people that do not have a lot of choices in how they travel. We've got areas where there's very low car ownership, and we need to make sure that they have the public transport system that they deserve. There are others that have a choice, and public transport needs to be reliable enough for them to decide that they will make a switch in the way that they travel. I think you've got to start to do things on the ground, but I do think as well that a vision is very important. And watch this space, but the 16th of March, we are launching our vision and our new transport brand. So the Mayor will share publicly his transport vision. So that's a spot.
You heard it here first.
You did. Watch this space.
Yeah, very good. And Tobin, you were in a slightly different aspect of the problem. You began to ask yourself the question, well, how do I make the benefits of an offshore wind farm real to the person on the number 23 omnibus? So again, thinking of the system boundaries here, the bigger systems, how do we tell the stories that make that meaningful for someone whose primary focus might be somewhere else entirely politically?
Yeah, and as my colleagues have already said, really, it's about delivering better for the general public. And as transport professionals, our job is to make people's journeys easy, as affordable as they can be, reliable, high quality, and give them good choices where that's possible. Now, my area's got a huge amount of rurality in it, a bit like parts of Wales. So we can't ever just focus just on our Tyne and Wear metro system and better buses. A lot of people would love to see a bus passing through their village in rural Northumberland. For them, we need to make sure that they've got access to good roads that aren't going to smash their car up because they're full of potholes. And we want to, if they want to make the transition to EV, they've got ways to charge it as they go. It isn't for us as officials, this is not a political panel, it's not for us to say, is climate change the primary focus, is decarbonisation the main objective? That's for others to decide based on political factors. But our job is to make sure that the services that people get fit those criteria so that they can actually make sure that they can get to work, or they can get to education or childcare or health services and do it in a way that means something to them. So we've got to remain focused on that. I did say earlier, I do think that even if we're tempted to disappear into complex speak and concepts, the people that we work for in devolved authorities, it's their job to keep us right and make sure that we're focused on the people that they're representing, and they certainly do, don't they? In no uncertain terms.
Andy, from the perspective of the supply chain, I'm going to go somewhere slightly different with this. Surely one of the benefits of a partner like Hitachi is that you can bring good experience from other countries, maybe other regions actually, but other countries as well. From that perspective, are there any areas of best practice you can see where these complicated technical things are being sold, if you like, or communicated in ways that are really connecting with people?
So you're right. There are examples, good examples of things that go on around the world in different parts. One of the benefits of an organisation like Hitachi is that the breadth of things that that Hitachi has capability on and knowledge of is vast.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we've talked about energy. We can talk about signalling. We can talk about train manufacture or tram manufacturing, maintenance, data management. A huge kind of scope. And yes, there are examples, but I would say as well, I think our experience has been that every circumstance is a little bit unique. And I think that's part of the challenge about how do you bring best practice, but also understand the local challenges and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And kind of the one other thought I'd add, absolutely kind of be passenger centric and be guided by the people. I think as the supply chain, as technology providers, it's really important that we offer flexibility and agility, because we don't know what the world's going to be like. We don't know what the demands are going to be. Things change, and if we set out with a big monolithic solution answer, in a few years' time, it won't be what's needed.
Yep.
So I do think an agile, flexible approach, both in the solutions that we deliver, but also in the kind of roadmap and where we want to go, is really important.
Okay, very good. Right, look, again, very conscious of time. I'm sure you feel as I do, we could happily spend and profitably spend the whole of the rest of the day on this conversation, because there's an awful lot to talk about. We haven't got a whole of the rest of the day. We've got enough time maybe for one final question. So I'm going to ask each of the panel to suggest to anyone in the audience who is maybe earlier on in the journey than you are, what are the first practical starting points? And that may be the thing you're most proud of having achieved, or it may be the thing that you think you need to do next. I leave it up to you. But massive, massive topic, super complicated. Lewis, where do we start?
So I think I'll probably repeat myself slightly if you bear with me.
No,
But
don't do that.
vision, I think, is really critical, and I think we were very fortunate a number of years ago to have a vision articulated for the South Wales Metro, which then evolved into a wider Wales transport strategy that a lot of people locally really bought into, and that's helped us really drive forward. So I think really articulating a vision, and if I may just very, very briefly, on the point around navigating the various political sensitivities, if you can find a vision that ticks boxes for a number of people in the different political spectrums, that's where it really wins. And I think public transport is one of those unique public services where you can easily do that if you try. So whether it's decarbonisation, whether it's access to jobs, whether it's helping improve air quality, all of it ticks so many boxes, and that's probably part of the reason why many of us work in this sector. So I think having a vision that is almost apolitical, for me, is where you start.
Okay, very good. Melanie?
I would say, looking at bus franchising, it is a massive undertaking, and you need your key stakeholders all lined up. There is massive opportunity for our customers, but with it comes risk. So it's a very complicated process. It's getting simpler. It has been simplified, but it has taken years for us to get to this point, and we're still September 27 before day one, tranche one. So it's about getting your partners lined up behind you, because once you then have control of the most popular public transport mode, then you can start to integrate other transport modes. Sorry, I used the word modes there, Paul.
You did. It's all right, you're among friends. Good, okay, and just small advert, by the way. One of my other spare time activities, I'm on the Bus Centre of Excellence Advisory Board. So anybody who's in an authority who's thinking about the franchising journey, the Bus Centre of Excellence should have some resources to help. So thank you. Tobin?
I'll start by agreeing with what my colleagues have already said. You know, the vision and the plan are essential, and buy-in from everybody that you're working with in the stakeholder environment. You can't progress before you've got those things, but I'll take it one step further, which is equally, unless you understand your tools for delivery and have the ability to deliver, it's pretty pointless having a plan. And I think that is where we have been for decades in the transport industry, certainly in the local government side of it. Lots and lots of great ideas, matching national policy, all brilliant, but we didn't have the tools to deliver. That's why you're seeing bus franchising coming in and expansion of mass rapid transit systems, because then you've got it in the hands of local government who can then lead this integration. They can't do it all alone. They need lots of partners. They certainly need private sector partnerships. But if all you're doing is writing plans and then trying to convene round tables of people to deliver them, you'll get nowhere, which is perhaps back to my opening point. And I said I've been around donkey's years. I was just thinking earlier of how many round tables I've sat around chaired by government ministers saying, let's do smart cards. And it's been going on for 15 years. It's only when you get the tools of delivery at local government level can you actually implement smart ticketing solutions for passengers.
Brilliant. And Annie, I'm afraid you've only got 30 seconds, but it's going to be a fantastic 30 seconds, and you get the last word.
I'd echo the kind of need for clear vision, engaging your stakeholders, starting on the journey. We kind of deal with, in the kind of transport space, we're all about journeys, aren't we? And I think this is a journey that the industry goes on together. And as I say, I think you need people that are like-minded, people that challenge your thinking, but recognise that we're in it together.
In it together. What? Oh, I'm informed and heart-warmed. Thank you very much. Please give the panel a massive round of applause. That was fantastic.